What's up everyone? Happy Halloween. So today I'm highlighting another one of my own caches. It's hidden right over there, but it's nothing special. I've had to keep downgrading it over the years because it keeps getting stolen. But this cache is more about the history than it is the geocache itself. And I'm going to tell you the story of it. This is a ghost story, rooted in historic fact. I do want to warn everyone that this is the story of a real-life double homicide, and that some of the details may be disturbing to some viewers. Anderson Cemetery outside of Decatur, Michigan. In this cemetery lies Charles Henry Morris and his wife Esther. The couple wed on Christmas Eve 1869, and they quickly became one of the more respected couples in the community. They were young, hard-working farmers and quite wealthy by all accounts. In fact, it was said they had no enemies whatsoever. The couple lived in a farmhouse set back off the road away from any nearby neighbors about 5 miles outside of town. Newspapers at the time described the Morris estate as large and elegantly furnished. For a while, they employed a handyman named Riley Huntley and a woman named Jenny Bull. In the days leading up to Sunday, September 28, 1879, Charles had been busy harvesting wheat with the intention of selling it on Monday morning. That evening, Charles, Esther, and Jenny were alone in the home. Jenny went to bed first at around 8 p.m., and the Morrises soon after that. It's worth noting two things here. One, Jenny's bedroom was directly above Charles and Esther's. And two, that Charles always kept a revolver on the stand next to his bed. We don't know a whole lot about what happened after that. Much of it is speculation based on eyewitness accounts and what detectives were able to piece together from the scene. Around 9 p.m., Charles got up from bed and went to the front door. He left the revolver and his sleeping wife behind. It's generally believed that he got up to answer a knock at the door. But we have no way of knowing for certain. The one thing that we do know is that this was the last thing that Charles Morris ever did. The second he stepped out on the porch, Charles was shot twice with a Colt Navy revolver. The first slug hit Charles in the neck, and the second through the heart. At this point, police speculated Esther was awoken by the sound of the noise and grabbed her husband's revolver off the nightstand. She sprinted from the bedroom to the front door. We don't really know what happened at this point, but it's generally believed that upon seeing the killer and her husband lying dead on the porch, that she panicked and dropped the gun. The hammer on the revolver she was holding was never even cocked. Esther turned and fled back into the bedroom, but the killer followed. 2 more shots rang out. One of those shots missed its mark. The second shot broke Esther's left arm. She managed to make it into a closet. This is where the killer cornered her. The killer shot Mrs. Morris 2 more times through the chest. The second shot went through the heart and killed her instantly. This is where the story takes a really strange turn, because the bodies weren't discovered until 6 a.m. the following morning when Jenny Bull awakened and went downstairs. A further tragedy is uncovered in the aftermath of the crime. It is discovered that Mrs. Morris was pregnant when she was slain. Police and detectives are puzzled by this bizarre crime. In the bedroom, they find $110, the equivalent of nearly $2,800 today. 2 watches are left sitting out in the open, but they're completely untouched, as was Mrs. Morris's jewelry. The only thing that they can find that has been misplaced is a pair of pants that was taken from the house to the barn, but he or she didn't take anything from the pockets. It gets even stranger from there. One of Charles's best horses is missing, presumably taken by the killer, but the saddle and bridles in the barn are completely undisturbed. This leads detectives to assume the killer brought a saddle and bridle with him. Later that day, the horse was found about 30 miles away in South Bend, Indiana. The horse was tired from having been run especially hard and then abandoned. Witnesses say it was clearly wearing a saddle, which was now missing. In a small town, news travels fast, and people quickly became very angry and upset, and it didn't take long for the rumors to start flying. Suspicion fell on Riley Huntley almost immediately. He was the handyman who was previously in the employ of the Morrises. Charles had fired Huntley in July, reportedly for his constant drunkenness. It made sense. Detectives believed the killer was only there to kill Mr. and Mrs. Morris, and that he or she had some familiarity with the house. However, Jenny Bull came forward and vouched for Huntley. She claimed that there was no trouble when Mr. Morris asked him to leave. She even said that it was a friendly goodbye when he left. It is worth noting that at the time of the murders, Huntley lived in the South Bend area. When the authorities started looking into Huntley, he accused another local man by the name of Floyd Smith of the killing. The police and the locals took it quite seriously. On December 17, 1879, the police arrested Floyd, but some locals took matters into their own hands. They ambushed the police and took Smith off into the woods where they tortured him for hours trying to get him to confess. He refused. Smith suffered from neck injuries the rest of his life from the incident, and he refused to say that he had any part in the murders, even on his deathbed years later. The authorities do have one eyewitness who saw the killer. Charles Rosewarne told authorities he was on his way home sometime between 9 and 10 p.m. when he encountered a rider on a horse he recognized as belonging to Charles Morris. However, Rosewarne brushed the incident off until he heard the news the following morning. Unfortunately, Rosewarne can't give authorities a better description because he said the killer was wearing a mask and was wearing what he described as a funny hat. Strangely enough, there isn't much suspicion on Jenny Bull. She even later admits that she is not a sound sleeper. But it seems the authorities never looked much into the possibility of her having a role in the killings. She later just seemingly vanishes from the pages of history, never to be heard from again. These murders made headlines nationwide and even garnered the attention of the Pinkerton Detective Agency. The Pinkertons swore that the person responsible would be brought to justice, but no one was ever charged or apprehended in this case. Nearly 2,000 people packed this cemetery to attend services for Charles and Ester Morris. For perspective, that's nearly the entire population of Decatur in 2019. For nearly 90 years after the murders, the Morris home sat abandoned and untouched, except for the occasional thrill seekers who went in from time to time. However, sometime in the early 1960s, the house was burned down by an arsonist. Today, the only physical reminder of the murders is down a quiet dirt road and the large double headstone that marks the final resting place of Charles and Ester Morris. In the years since the killings, rumors began to spread that this cemetery was haunted by the ghosts of Charles and Ester, still trying to find justice. A popular urban legend says that the stone glows brightly on the anniversary of the murders. Personally, I've visited this cemetery many times. I've even visited it on the night of the murders. but I've never encountered anything unusual. I think it's better that way, because it would be awful to look for justice where there is none for centuries. And I truly hope that wherever they are now, that their souls are at rest. The 140th anniversary of these murders just passed, yet residents of Decatur and the surrounding areas still talk about them. Just who killed Charles and Ester Morris? And an even better question, why did they do it? It's a completely senseless tragedy with no good answers. Unfortunately, with so much time passed, it's unlikely we'll ever know for certain. Whoever killed them never faced justice, and may have just gotten away with the perfect murder. What do you think happened? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.